Welcome to Agree to Disagree, the podcast where two sisters show how you can disagree about everything but still keep that family bond and friendship.
That's right. We're Sharon and Karen, and we don't just see the world differently, we live it differently. Grab a coffee, settle in, and enjoy the conversation. Who knows? You might even find yourself changing sides.
Hi, I'm Karen, coming at you from Morocco.
Hi, I'm Sharon, coming at you from Texas. And we are here today to talk about one of the executive orders.
And which one would that be?
That would be the one where he renamed the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. Not.
You know, did you say not?
Not.
So I think we know where you stand on this issue.
I'm sorry. It's the Gulf of Mexico.
Well,
he can call it whatever he wants to call it.
Yeah.
I'm not calling it that.
I get why he's doing it, from the standpoint
Why do you think he's doing it?
I think he's trying to show dominance, and I think he's trying to show that this is his way of making America great again, and it borders us, so we should name it Gulf of America. It's like he loves to put his name on everything. And so I'm surprised, honestly, he didn't call it Trump.
You're saying his
Gulf
name
of
is
Trump.
America?
No, I'm saying, well, he's about to be king of America. So yeah, I think I'm surprised he actually didn't call it Gulf of Trump. Honestly, because if he had called it Gulf of the Americas or the Americas Gulf, it would have been more representation of what it actually is, because it is a gulf that is surrounded by the Americas.
Three countries, yes, the North America, yeah, and it's three countries. So my husband thinks he did it, and I guess he saw a clip or something that said that he did it because Biden had done an executive order saying there can be no drilling, and I looked it up, that there can be no drilling
in the Gulf of Mexico.
Yeah. Well,
so now there can be
no. Let's see. He issued 2 presidential memorandums. Biden did, that withdrew more than 625 million acres of coastal waters from potentially being leased for new oil and natural gas production. He did it January 6th of this year. So there is that school of thought that says, well, that's why Trump did it, was if we kind of, I guess, symbolically take more ownership over it, maybe he could override that. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. We only own 12 miles from 12 nautical miles. Mexico only owns 12 nautical miles from their shore out. The rest is international. And then Cuba as well. The rest is international water.
Right.
Now, we do have rights to drill 200. We do have the rights to drill in the current 200 nautical miles. The U.S. has rights to do that right now, but I think Biden was trying to take it away. So now all that's going to go to court, right?
It doesn't make any sense that he would change the name to try to get around that, unless he thinks that if Biden's directive said the Gulf of Mexico, it's like, okay, well, it doesn't apply now because it's the Gulf of America. Like, I don't understand how just changing the name would have any impact on something he said about drilling.
Yeah, well, what President Biden's act was the Outer Continental Shelf Lands Act. He leaned on that, which was a 1953 law that allows presidents to protect unleased lands of the Outer Continental Shelf from oil and gas development. But in 2019, a federal judge ruled that any such prohibit. But I think, well, like I said, this is one school of thought. I think that's where possibly the economical reasons are behind the name change. However, I personally think it is Trump trying to make a statement, which is what you were saying earlier. So I agree with you on that. I think it's just trying to make a statement. However, it costs money to do this stuff, and I'm not okay with you spending
it's going to cost a fortune to redo every textbook, to reprint, the time to redo everything.
And,
it's
Obama
ridiculous.
did the same thing. Obama did the same thing. He changed the name of Mount McKinley in Alaska to Denali when he was in office.
Well, now to me, that's different, because
I knew you were going to say it was different.
Yes, because that is changing the name back to its original name, and that is going back to giving credit to the Native Americans who named it originally. The Gulf of Mexico has never been Gulf of America. Never. Did you know, fun fact, there was a Gulf of America in the world. Do you want to guess where it was?
No, I do not.
It was in, no, I do not.
Absolutely do not want to guess.
It was in Russia, and it was a bay. It's called Nakhodka Bay, something like that. Nakhodka. It was historically called the Gulf of America because a Russian that had sailed into it was on a ship called America. His ship was named America, and this was way back when. I don't even remember what year. And so they called it the Gulf of America. And it didn't change until I think like 1963 or something. Isn't that interesting? I thought that was very interesting. But going back to
interesting.
Denali,
but
interesting.
It's so interesting. I'm like, sorry, I don't really give a crap. But going back to the Denali thing, okay, yes, the Native Alaskans, they called it Denali for centuries, but it was not an official name by the U.S. And it wasn't until
but at least
1896. 1896 is when it became Mount McKinley. So now we're saying, oh, guess what? So Obama came in and then he said, no, we're going to, even though they named the national park associated with Mount McKinley Denali, that wasn't good enough. Nope, we're going to spend a whole bunch of money to change the name from Mount McKinley to Denali. And now Trump is saying, oh, now we're going to change it back to Mount McKinley and spend more money. And I'm like, can y'all stop, please, spending our money just for the freaking purpose of
I agree with you.
Making
I
a
agree
statement.
with you.
I'm like
I'm not
tired of
saying
this grandstanding.
it is grandstanding. And I think, Obama was probably doing it as a gesture. It was the same thing as a goodwill gesture. Like, this will get me points because
absolutely he was.
I'm acknowledging
absolutely he was.
Which is what Trump is doing as well. Don't you also think that this is a big nothing except for the money that is being spent? Who cares?
Absolutely. That's what I'm saying. This is a grandstand that's going to cost the taxpayers money. Now, what surprises me, though, that Google's already changed it. And I'm like, gosh, that's really surprising because Google's a left-leaning company.
No, it is not. Google was at his inauguration. Are you kidding me? Google is now in his pocket.
Well, okay, which goes back to
Google is not a left-leaning.
We had where everything, government and corporates are linked at the hip, and they are in each other's
government
pockets
and large corporations, government and billionaires are. I mean, if you don't think that the U.S. is going towards an oligarchy,
well,
come on.
Last week when we talked, you were saying, "Oh no, they're not."
I'm talking about Google. I'm talking about Amazon.
And I'm like,
yes, but I do not believe the individual scientists working on vaccines are in the pocket of government.
Individual scientists working on vaccines are not individual scientists. They are paid by pharmaceutical companies. They are employed. They are not contractors. They are employed by pharmaceutical companies, or if they are contractors, they're getting paid highly by pharmaceutical companies. They're not independents.
Well, what I'm saying, though, is I still believe the individual scientist. I don't believe Merck. I don't believe the big pharmaceutical companies, but I do believe the individual scientists that are working on it. Yeah, and I believe a doctor and an individual scientist over.
We can go back to that. We're going to have one of our topics one day, the gaslighting of women in healthcare in the U.S. We're going to have that as a topic, and I will tell you all of my specific examples of when I've been gaslit by a freaking doctor. So we'll talk about that. Don't worry. So this is what's interesting, though. Did you, in your so I did research.
Look at you. You did research.
I know. I was so proud of myself.
I'm so proud of you.
When I couldn't sleep last night, I'm like, you know what? Maybe you should research your topic that you're going to talk about tomorrow with your sister.
Do you know what? It's really good that you did this because I did do my research and I can't find it. I don't know. I don't think I saved it anywhere. So whatever I did is gone.
Yes. One for Sharon. Finally.
So
one for Sharon.
Hit it.
So did you know that there are multiple bodies of water that are under dispute for the
Yes,
names?
I did know that. I did look at that. The Sea of China.
South China Sea. Yeah. The South China Sea. China calls it different than Vietnam. Philippines call it different.
Which again, I think is why this is not a big deal.
So it's not, America's not unique in
It's not unique.
disputing. And this is not the first time that this has come up either, is what I found. It's not the first time that people have brought this up and wanted to change the name and stuff. You know,
Gulf of Mexico?
Yeah.
I didn't find that anyone from the U.S. had wanted to rename it. I thought that it was people in Mexico that wanted to rename it.
No. It's come up in the U.S. as well, wanting to rename it.
I didn't see that.
America, but it never took, right? Which is fine.
But also, if you look at when I was looking at the other things that are in dispute, again, they're in dispute because the neighbors are in dispute. Like, to me, this does nothing but alienate Mexico.
That goes into another, but that probably is going to go into another whole topic for us to talk about, which we know it will. Immigration's on our list.
No, but just even this issue right here, the changing the name of Gulf of Mexico, it does nothing to help that relationship.
But how does changing the name, or how does changing the name of the South China Sea do anything to help with those relations either? Like, how would it help with those relations?
It doesn't help. They changed it because they're in dispute anyway, and that's why they're both laying claim to that body of water.
I would say that we are in dispute with Mexico right now because they're not helping us with all the drug trafficking and the immigration issues we're having. They're not helping. They're not helping. Well, they're not. I mean, they're not really doing anything to help us, right?
I think we disagree on that. Definitely doesn't help the relationship.
Trump. Well, that's the other thing I read about Trump's reasoning behind this was he's trying to not just make a statement, but he's also trying to say, if it's the Gulf of America, you know, we're going to take more ownership over the trafficking that happens in the waters. That's what I've heard him say as well, or what I read that he has said.
I haven't heard him say that. But I think it also might be that Trump just wants to name it as the first step in just taking control.
Oh, it's totally a stance. Oh, it's totally a grandstand. It's totally grandstanding.
No, I'm not talking about grandstanding. I'm talking about it's the first step in just taking ownership of the entire thing. To me, it's not grandstanding. To me, it's bully tactics.
Of the Gulf of Mexico?
Yes,
Gulf of Mexico,
trying to take control. Yes,
he'll
of the
never,
whole thing.
He'll never be able to do that because,
well,
you know, I did my research
what we're
on this.
learning.
Let me just tell you. I'll read about it. Let me just tell you what I found. Okay.
You know, because international law doesn't seem to stop him from wanting to do things. So it'll be interesting to see where.
Well, international law doesn't stop most people from wanting to do things. It doesn't mean that they can do it, though. So, under provisions of the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, the United States directly controls the waters of the Gulf of Mexico, approximately. I'm sorry, it's Gulf of Mexico. I'll never say Gulf of America. 12 nautical miles from its shores. It also maintains what is known as an exclusive economic zone stretching 200 miles offshore, which allows it to explore, exploit, conserve, and manage natural resources according to the NOAA. So then I had to go look up what the hell is the NOAA. The NOAA is the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Yeah. And so,
which he's either obliterated by now or just doesn't subscribe to.
No.
There's probably 3 people working left in the office.
Yeah, probably. I really and truly think that it's just a grandstand. I really do. And it's not going to do anything.
Well, but that's just it. It's not that it's going to do anything, but it is going to cost money. And I don't see pushback from his supporters, except for you. I don't see any pushback on that. It's like you're spending money unnecessarily on something that is not going to add any value to the U.S.
Well, you know, I had a conversation about this with a friend of mine yesterday, and she totally agrees with me as well on this whole point. She's like, it's just going to cost us money, blah, blah, blah. But I had another conversation with somebody else, and they're like, this doesn't cost any money. And I'm like, yes, it does. This costs a lot of money. I read that it cost
$30 million for him to go to the Super Bowl and go to NASCAR.
But guess
And then
what?
people get excited
was
because he
not
saves 30 million on one of the departments
Doge
that he
stuff.
slashes.
Yeah. So this is my issue. We didn't get to decide on this. I didn't get to decide if I spent my money on the name change. I didn't get to decide that. I didn't get to decide if he went to the Super Bowl. I don't get to make those decisions. But my
No,
money
that's
is
not
still
the
spent
point.
on that stuff.
That's not the point. The point that I'm trying to make is he's saying, I'm going to save money. We're going to reduce waste.
Oh,
We're
exactly.
going
It's
to
pissing
get
me
rid of
off.
fraud.
It's pissing me
And
off.
it's hypocritical. Now, most politicians are hypocritical. So this isn't new. But
Absolutely.
what surprises me is that people, from what I've seen and the Trump supporters I've talked to, people elected Trump because he wasn't the establishment, because he was going to get in there and do things for the people and make things better. But yet you see him just doing the same things in some respects. Because like you said, Obama did this, so he's going to do it. He takes policies, and just because Biden did it, I'm going to undo it, even though there's no substance behind the decision. So he's just as political as the politicians.
I agree with you on the point of the first time he got elected was because he was not part of the establishment. But during 4 years in term and the 4 years out of term, he learned the establishment. So he's now playing the game. I mean, unfortunately, this is how our government has been established, and it's very corrupt right now. And we are no longer, in my opinion, a government of the people. Because if we were, I would get to choose whether you spend your money on renaming the Gulf of Mexico. And I would say, absolutely not. That's not where my tax dollars are going.
Yeah.
They're going to go over here for that. We're going to make cuts here. We're going to save money over here. And then you're going to spend money here and you're going to spend money there. You know, that we would be able to vote on that stuff collectively as a country, right?
Yeah.
But we don't. We don't get to, especially at the federal level. Like, we really don't. I mean, it's because we can vote on our state stuff, but federally, it's a little bit more complicated than that. But
so do you think that he will rename some
because of the economy? Go ahead.
I don't think he got elected because of the economy. I think that it was because people are just so. The economy was really not doing that badly.
Oh
Prices
my gosh! You don't
high.
live here. You don't live here.
No. Prices are rising here as well.
People are still getting laid off. People are still getting laid off.
It's not just Democratic policies. This is what I don't understand is people say Trump's going to come in and fix everything. And it's like he's bringing in the same Republican policies that we have had in the past that still don't fix anything, because going in and butchering all of these agencies is not fixing the problems. The problem is you need to get money out of politics.
There's no way to get money out of politics. How are you going to get money out of politics?
There are ways to do it. Did you know in the UK, before their
have
election,
a king. Like in Morocco, you can maybe have a king. You can have a completely different system of government.
No, I said in the UK. The UK still has a parliament. They have a king, but they still have a parliament. They still have a prime minister. They still have elections, but they're only allowed to run commercials and actually go out and stump for their parties 6 weeks before the election. In the US, they start 2 years in advance.
Okay.
At least 2 years.
That's a different discussion, though. That's a different discussion.
But that's how you also get money out of politics.
That's just campaigning. But that's just campaigning, and I completely agree that
they wouldn't need as much money. Yeah, they wouldn't need as much money if they didn't have to campaign as much.
Absolutely.
Okay, so back to the name.
We do agree.
Back to the name. But this is also why we wanted to do this. We wanted to show that, at the heart of it, we do agree on a lot of issues, even though we support.
When you get past,
when you get past the talking points into the heart of the matter, we do have agreement.
Yes.
I did see something.
I mean, but there are nuances of what we've talked about that we may not agree on, right?
Yes.
Like, I'm glad that you kind of brought this up, because that is kind of what this podcast is about, is to show people that you can have disagreements, but if you aren't talking to one another civilly, if you're not having civil conversations with each other about the issues, and not just the superficial talking points, like you said, but actually diving into, well, why this, or what about this, or let's talk, then you don't find those commonalities. If you're not able to get past the emotions that you bring to this. It's okay for somebody to have a differing opinion, and that's based on a different value set. So yeah, I agree with you. I agree.
Yeah.
Gosh, see, I agree. I think I've been saying I agree with you a lot during this podcast. Surprise, surprise.
Yeah. So do you think he's going to rename anything else?
Besides Denali back to Mount
besides
McKinley?
Mount McKinley and Gulf of Mexico?
God, I hope not. I hope not.
So we could rename.
It's just money.
We could rename the Grand Canyon to the really big hole of America, or Trump Canyon,
the sphincter of America.
Well, there's a petition going around. Is it a petition, or did the governor of the state actually put it forward to try to get Trump's face on Mount Rushmore?
Oh, absolutely not. I would fight that 100%. I'm sorry.
Well,
no.
You call yourself a MAGA.
No, I don't call myself a MAGA. I've never called myself a MAGA. Do you remember our trip growing up to Mount Rushmore?
No.
Oh.
How old was I?
I
was probably 2.
You were, no. You were probably at least 7 or 8 or 9. Because I think I was probably 10 or 11. So you're probably 7 or 8.
Oh no, I have no memory of that whatsoever.
Yeah. You remember we used to take lots of trips, right?
Yeah.
Around the U.S. Dad was all into camping and RVing and stuff. Out of all the trips that we took, all the places that we went, that was actually a spiritual experience for me.
Really?
I loved Mount Rushmore. Well, I don't know if you remember, but I was like a huge fan, and I used to read biographies of the presidents, and I knew all the presidents and all the vice presidents' names all the way back to George Washington, and I loved researching about the presidents and stuff. And so that was a very spiritual experience for me. It had to have been maybe later. You were maybe 10 and I was maybe 13, 12.
I do not remember it. It was not spiritual for me.
Oh, it was very spiritual for me. Did you know
Have you been
that
back?
the artist lived? No. Did you know the artist lived in Beeville, Texas when he was finishing it?
I think you told me that one time. But isn't it his son that finished it? Didn't the original?
It was his
guy
son
die?
that finished it. Yeah. His son finished it, but they lived in Beeville. Yeah, I know.
Well, I think it would be really sad if they put Trump's face up there.
There's no way. There's no way.
Well,
not even MAGA. Not even MAGA members are going to want to do that. I wouldn't think.
But I think
because again,
I think it's funny is that you say
it's changing our traditional. There's
he is all about changing traditions. He is all about changing traditions.
Not monuments. He's not about changing monuments.
Oh,
historical monuments, and that's a historical monument.
You're very surprised. I think
that's a historical monument. No. Because he's wanting to bring those things back that were destroyed and taken down during the last administration.
National monuments.
So that's a whole nother topic. Some of them were taken down.
That's it.
Some of them were taken down
statues.
and removed. Yeah,
statues
and stuff like that.
That are offensive to some people.
That's a whole other conversation that you and I are going to have that conversation. We will have that conversation.
We will have that conversation.
We will have that conversation. We will. It's the Gulf of Mexico. It'll always be the Gulf of Mexico because traditionally that's what it was and what it is.
You know that the president of Mexico has threatened to sue Google. Did you see that?
Yeah,
she did. But what I thought was interesting is that I saw the letter that she sent to Google. So she sent this letter, and I don't know what response she got or if she got a response. But it said something like, "We are insisting that you name it America, Mexicana, or something like that."
No, Mexicana was first. Mexicana, Americana, Americana is what I saw.
Well, if you're gonna threaten something, why not just say take it back to Gulf of Mexico?
I know. That's how I am. I'm like, why not just
But I do think it's ridiculous that Google is, it depends on where you are in the world as to what it is going to say. And
I read that too. too.
So if I pull it up on my phone, it's still Gulf of Mexico because I'm located in Africa. Yeah. And if you pull it up on your phone, it says Gulf of America.
Which to me, that's just pandering. That's just pandering to different audiences, And I'm like, so then to me, you're destroying any credibility a name change has.
Because he didn't go about it the right way. And it's like, if you really seriously want to change the name, have a conversation with Mexico, decide on it together, and then try to come up with a name and say, yes, we're going to move forward and we're going to do this name change globally. And everyone is in agreement with it, and the international community. And there's a way to get things done without bulldozing.
He didn't do that because there are disputes with Mexico and America, and that's why he didn't do that.
He also didn't do that because he's a big
China
bully.
with the China Sea name.
Yeah, but
all politicians are bullies. All politicians are bullies.
No, America
They're
is a
all
bully,
narcissistic.
but
they're all narcissistic.
Trump is an exceptional bully. He really is.
No.
Well, so we pretty much agree on Gulf of Mexico. The name change to Gulf of America is ridiculous, costly, unnecessary,
and
pandering.
Costly and unnecessary and pandering. And the way it's being executed is
and the way it's being executed,
and more costly. And I think even
but it's done.
Discounts the whole purpose behind it. So it's like ridiculous. Yeah,
it's ridiculous. It's a done deal.
We agree to agree on this one, sis.
We agree to agree. Yeah. But I do think that the media is making too big of a deal out of it. It's like, it's done. Why are we still talking about it? Like, it shouldn't even be.
Exactly. Just move on.
No one should care.
Other more
at this
important
point,
things to worry
like you
about.
said,
I know.
we can't stop the amount of money that's being spent to change it. So move on. It's really not a big deal. There are so many other things going on.
Yes, I was not allowed to vote on whether we wanted to spend money on this or not. So.
That wraps up today's show. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed the show, please leave us a rating and review.
We want to hear from you. Reach out to us on Facebook and Instagram, or shoot us an email at agreetodisagree@gmail.com.
Let us know what you think, what topics you'd like us to cover, or any questions you might have. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next episode.